We've got a lot to get to here. We're going to waste no time. I want to go down the line here first, everybody, and have each of our speakers introduce themselves. I want you to tell us where you're from, what you do, and tell us what's most exciting right now about this technology, artificial intelligence, when it comes to the recruiting process. Carl, we'll start with you.
Hey, thank you. Thanks, Jake.
Yeah.
It's Carl Sanders-Edwards, the co-founder of Adeption. We do leadership development at scale. And the thing that I'm most excited about is the disruption that's happening. There's a huge amount of disruption in work, and that could be a bad thing or it could be a good thing. And I feel there's an opportunity for it to usher in a whole generation of leadership like we haven't seen before. So it's an opportunity for some really great stuff to happen.
Yeah, Aaron.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Erin Bogdanovich. I'm the VP of Innovation for LHH, and we're a global talent solutions provider. We focus on recruitment, outplacement, and leadership development as well. And I would say what I'm most excited and focused on right now is really about how to leverage the changing technologies and AI to free up time on our recruiters' desks to actually focus on that human connection. I think there's this misconception that AI and technology is there to replace when really it's about enhancing that experience.
I love that. We'll get to that a lot too. Anthony, good morning.
Good morning. Anthony Palumbo. I am with Amazon. I look after our Amazon advertising business along with our IMDb business. I might echo what you just said, is every day is a little different. I think with AI and the technology and how fast it's moving, I feel like how do we best kind of harness that with our recruiters? How do we teach them how to leverage it? How do we also use it in ways to help the candidate experience improve? And build efficiencies in there to help us hire faster with more quality and provide like a top-notch experience for every candidate.
Hi, everyone. My name is Roz Francuz-Harris.
You have a fan. We're signing autographs after the conference.
We're on the same payroll. I am the Vice President of Talent Acquisition and Engagement and Belonging at Zillow Group. And plus one to everything that my peers have said here, but I think the other part of it is what AI really does for recruiting teams, because it is freeing us up to be more strategic, to be more human focused. I think it actually connects us closer to our business objectives. And it actually gives us an opportunity to pull up out of the task and understand the impact that we're having on our consumers or our customers. And in our instance, helping millions of Americans get home. Is very important. And I think AI gives us the opportunity to feel that more in the recruiting function.
Love that. Last but not least, Jack, good morning.
Good morning. Jack from Uber. And I think echoing.
Your Uber's ready.
Pulling recruiters out of the trenches, right? Like that's really the most important thing that we're seeing today on the enablement side too, like getting them the information they need to be able to do their job without having to get bogged down all the systems.
Great. Well, using this new technology in this space and finding and developing talent with AI, for example, some professionals have anxiety about it. Some employees, this is new territory for them. As I talk with you, I'm finding that it's been used a lot longer than I thought. I mean, Roz, for example, at Zillow, 20 years, this sort of technology has been implemented. How has it evolved? Get us up to speed on how it's being accepted at Zillow.
Well, I'm no engineer, but AI has evolved tremendously. I mean, many of us remember, this estimate. I'm assuming that we have some Seattle locals in here who use Zillow. But that technology has been powered by AI since its existence. But how we're using it now in human resources is significantly different. This has been the one place where our goal was to safeguard ourselves from AI, to keep it about the people and policy. And so there was a lot of fear, even at Zillow with my team, around us bringing this technology into the organization. Many of you don't know me, but I am a kind of person where I jump in feet first. It could be real bad most of the time. But in this instance, it ended up being great for my talent team. We took a different approach. We actually gamified it. We realized there was so much fear around AI. There was so much fear for the recruiters and sourcers thinking that this technology we were going to bring in to actually replace them. That was the original sentiment. If you go back 2.5 years ago, it was, I remember someone posted all the jobs that could be replaced by AI. At the top of it, it was recruiters and sourcers. We gamified it. We did prompathons. We taught the team how to actually use the very basic of ChatGPT, all the way into how do we use AI to have difficult conversations with hiring managers, And then we took it a step further on the operations side, which was how do we get with all of our vendor partners to understand their product roadmaps and how they intend to use AI to actually make our teams much more efficient. And once our team started to understand that it was about enabling them and not replacing them, the fear went away. And we were able to then embed it all the way up and down our entire TA tech stack. From phone screen to offer process, we are assisted by AI each step of the way.
Yeah, it's great. Embracing the process. A huge number of applicants at Amazon, Anthony. How are Amazonians embracing this when it comes to recruiting?
I think the primary thing where we're applying technology is within the funnel at areas where it'll drive more efficiency. It'll kind of eliminate redundant kind of administrative tasks. So we use it in some of our automation with regards to like applications, for instance. So when you think about, you apply to a job, Amazon's huge. You apply to a job, you never hear back, you wonder what's going on. We've started to apply some throttling technology to the application process as far as posting goes. So if we see that a posting is receiving a heavy influx of applicants, we'll actually pull it down so that the recruiter has time to keep pace with that. And it'll throttle open and close. That's one thing we look at. We also are working on, and we're not perfect at this either, the amount of volume we get in applications. I think we're constantly looking for ways to how do we better manage that flow, and then also how do we keep the candidate at the center of it the whole time. So we'll do things like we have a promise that we will follow up in 2 days after a phone screen. We'll follow up in 5 days after an interview. And we're gold on that across the company in order to make sure the candidate always knows that there's somebody that's going to get back to them. But this is early days as far as how do you manage your funnel. And I think that the key is like applying technology, using high judgment, preserving candidate experience, but not eliminating the human aspect of what we do, which is super crucial. I think, and you may know this better than me, Jake, but the 3 big decisions people make are what: buying a home, buying a car, and what job you take, I think. And so to automate that is a hard one. You need that experience with a human.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's evolving quickly. And Carl, adaption is a huge part of it. How do you infuse AI to help the people that are trying to get a job?
Yeah, so it's, adaption. It was a retired word, and it came from originally the art or act of attainment, which is where we brought it back. So we're sort of thinking about attaining skills and developing people. So our place on it's a little bit different. We've kind of got like 2 ends to it. We're developing people in their roles to create skills that they don't yet know how to do. And we're also supporting it with humans at the back end. So I've got a couple of sort of stories about this anxiety that comes about. The first is we were working with a group of coaches who were going to be at the back end of this, and it vastly increases the scale with which they can do coaching to help develop people's skills. And it was going really well, I thought. Myself and a colleague, we were talking through, this was 5 or 6 years ago, and we'd integrated AI at that stage into the platform that we were talking through. And these coaches were really interested in it. And towards the end of the session, we thought we'll just ask them about like where they are. And the thing with lots of coaches is they're quite evolved and they're very aware of themselves and their own biases and their own judgments and things. And we said, so what do you think? And half of them were like straight in there. This is what we've been after. This is really going to help us do our job in a way that we never could before to support these end people. And the other half just said, I wouldn't log in. They just had no interest at all. And it was like, why? And they said, we're scared. Fear. Like literally, they were, it was amazing because they were, as I said, evolved enough to be able to actually see that and admit it. They're like, it wouldn't matter how good it was, I just sort of feel a level of anxiety that I'm not prepared to engage with this. So it was really interesting for us. I think that's changed a lot now. It's moved forward. And a couple of years later, we had in participants, the leaders themselves or people within organisations we've found have been far more willing to engage generally than coaches. Maybe because they see it as something that's helping them. But we were running this event and we had, it was an event that had followed a whole lot of online work where people would engage in with this AI technology. And we do infuse humans into it as well, which is to your point, to create this, this real sense of and feeling there, and one of the facilitators, it wasn't me, it was my co-facilitator, of course, and we were talking about the AI in there, and one of the participants said, it was really great, there was Nick, it said it was you, and I realised it was you, but I knew it was the AI that was just talking to me the whole time I was working through, and he's like, it was me. And he was like, that's how easy it's going to be to replace me.
Interesting. Well, from a company standpoint too, Jack, speaking about Uber, a huge number of candidates, the volume of applicants that you must receive for a company like Uber must be overwhelming. Can you give us an insight into how Uber might whittle down the number of applicants to kind of get who you're looking for, and you're not leaving some of the best candidates unchecked?
Yeah, I think my friend here at Amazon mentioned it as well. Better placing the candidates where they might fit, so that we can be more efficient, is one way that you can use AI without removing any human recruiting element to the process, right? Like, you free up your recruiters to be more strategic with the business, engage with the candidates, focus on that experience, because they're getting the right high quality candidates that are actually pre-screened and a good fit for the roles that they're being considered for.
Yeah. And Aaron, LHH has 500,000 candidates around the world. Massive company too. Insight into how AI works in that process.
Yeah, and those are just the candidates that we place on a yearly basis, but we're dealing with over 300 million applications a year globally. And so the ability to follow up with those candidates and strategically use AI to make that candidate experience better is something that we've been really focused on in the last year. And last year we actually entered a partnership with Salesforce around Agentforce, and we built a 24/7 recruiter, and that recruiter's job is to go out and acknowledge applies, match candidates, answer questions that they might have. It's not a chatbot, it's actually using AI, so it's more on the agentic side of actually answering their questions and then serving up a better job that they can also apply to. Because in our space, we have professional recruitment, but we also have a deco that does more of the daily roles and the temp positions. And sometimes those candidates just need to go to work tomorrow. And then we also have on the other side of that, the candidates that are looking for their professional role, either as a VP of finance or an attorney placement. So we kind of do the full spectrum, but this 24/7 recruiter is following up with the candidates in the moment that they want to be followed up with. And the research that we've been looking into as a company is that candidates are actually okay with AI as long as it leads to a faster and more quality job. So are you using AI quickly and efficiently, not just any AI, but is it actually identifying the right job at the right time and can get them out to work as soon as possible? And they're okay with that. Like, they actually would prefer that in most cases.
Yeah, and I think it's the word acknowledgement. I think that's really interesting that you just mentioned, right? I mean, if you are applying for a job, you just want to be acknowledged that you put the application in and you're getting noticed. And because everyone that's applying has the skills, they know that they can fit in somewhere, and it's not just an all-out rejection. I'm wondering if any of you, Anthony, you're nodding your head, give me an idea of how you acknowledge and make people feel human.
I think one of the things, and I don't know that Amazon's the only company that's doing this, but leveraging AI on the back end when an applicant applies, it's almost like a nudge. It's like, hey, you applied for this job, but you know what? Based on your skills, you have these 5 jobs that also could fit your. And I think when you go from maybe the old way of like, oh, I found this one job, I'm going to apply. You're not aware, especially like Amazon, you have thousands and thousands of jobs. You can't possibly see all of those. So this kind of helps surface up what meets your skills, what's similar to the job you just applied for, and let's give you some more options, and maybe you can navigate to another role that might be a better fit.
Yeah, just sort of a personal touch, right? I mean, Roz, an idea from you on this idea as well. You want people to feel human, right?
I love this topic because it reminds me when I call my bank and it's an automated voice, and how quickly we press 0 and we scream, speak to a representative.
Totally. Representative.
It's that same choice that we want to give in the hiring process. We want candidates to have the ability to do certain tasks automated. I love this. Like, imagine, and you don't have to really imagine it, you can go to Zillow's career site and try this. Upload your resume, let the AI then recommend some jobs for you that are based on that, right? And then you go on and it'll actually do the application for you. It'll ask you some questions and fill it out for you. But then you get the option to say, but now I want to talk to a recruiter to better understand the culture, the values, the role, It's that duality. It's giving optionality, not one or the other. I think what makes AI so special is when it goes hand in hand with the human experience.
Yeah, and Carl, maybe you can touch on this as well. Just this idea of people wanting to be acknowledged. Do you get that sense from people looking for a job that they're frustrated with that?
Yeah, well, it plays out inside organisations as well, because if you sort of think of the recruitment happens, there's lots of job moves internally around, and what we see in our data is the biggest thing that will get somebody to engage with an AI-powered development experience, for example, is their one-up manager acknowledging what they're doing. If they've taken an experiment to try and improve something about their own skill set or do something else, and their manager acknowledges that, they are vastly more engaged in everything else they do. All of the other things just pale in comparison. So that acknowledgement from another human that you matter and that you've been noticed is massive.
Can I just add to this
Please,
topic?
yeah.
Because I think something we're talking about AI, but we're not actually saying. The reason candidates are not happy with the experience is because we haven't enabled our teams with AI enough to give them the bandwidth to actually do that. You're getting 7,000 applications. The reality is there's probably one recruiter whose job it is to go through that entire requisition. That is impossible. That was never something that we were able to do. So with your applicant number 4,981, chances are you're not going to get a phone call or a personalized message. What AI actually does is actually helps you out to say, you know what? You've got 7,000 applications here based on your job profile, your job description, your past hiring, the candidate's experience. Here's the first 100 you might want to start with. I'll go ahead and put together a note for you when you're ready to send to these other ones. But it kind of helps you go through that experience a little bit better as a recruiter. So recruiters got a bad rep. We all know that we got a rep in the candidate market, especially during those higher volume times where I remember it was trending on LinkedIn once where we were just ghosting candidates. No recruiter has ever set out to ghost candidates. That's not the experience we want to give. But when we don't have the right technology, whether that be automation or AI, we simply cannot get through the workload. So when you look at your opportunity there to leverage AI, it really is to, one, keep the reputation of your company or organization, but help recruiters actually have the bandwidth to do the job.
Yeah, Jack, it's can be tricky territory, right? I suppose for a company, say like Uber, that wants to give feedback to customers, you don't want them to feel rejected. I mean, in your case, an applicant is going to use an Uber. They're going to be an Uber customer as well. How do you sort of balance that?
I mean, it just highlights the importance of what we're talking about, right? Like every candidate or applicant that we get is a hopefully current customer, but potential customer and hopefully future as well, right? And the power of somebody having a bad experience and deleting the app, telling their friends and family, right? That's powerful, right? So like we have to think about, it's a double-edged sword, right? I think we'll take it for being a market leader, but you have to kind of consider your impact on the business with what you do with your candidates.
Erin, do you often find that people are just giving up in the situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is unfortunately the reality of it. I mean, I was reading an article just earlier this week around that it takes an average of 6 months right now to find a job if you're unemployed. That's up 1 month from just a year ago, where it only took 5 months to find a job if you're unemployed. And I think that 5 months is incredibly long, but that is emotionally just really kind of devastating and stressful. Yeah. And I think that, there is this reputation of applies going into black holes and not hearing back from recruiters and not knowing where you stand. And so, I think any way that we can increase transparency around that, I mean, even if it is just the AI is shortlisting candidates, then you're sending an email to the rest of them that they're not in contention, or, I love your 5-day follow-up after an interview rule. Implement that one too, but sometimes we don't know because we're client-facing. But but even we've developed it on we have a candidate portal that any job that they apply to, you can log in and it's directly tied into our ATS, and they can get real-time status updates on any of the jobs that they're in consideration for. So I think that the transparency and using AI from a communication standpoint, again, the candidates, they're telling us that that's what they want. They want feedback, they want transparency, which is kind of crazy in a world of ghosting where the candidates are the ones that invented it in the dating cycle, but here they are. So they want it from their recruiters. So
also, you're looking for leaders, right? You're looking for specific characteristics in some of the people that are applying for the job. Can AI sort of root that out? Does technology help with that in terms of finding the best leaders?
Yeah, I think where we're using AI is really around some of the interview questions and having prompts and assessments in that sense. And so we're also looking at opportunities of where AI can jump in and put candidates, especially in our outplacement business, where we can put candidates onto like a career journey. And to what your company does, I mean, we do a little bit of it too, but we can upskill them and use AI to say, well, this is where you're at today. You say you want to be here. Here's the skills gap that you have. And AI is identifying those skill gaps. And then, of course, we have coaches and trainers that go in and upskill in that sense, or they do it upon their own efforts. But that's where I think AI, like I had a really important speaking engagement last week with the first grade class at St. Joe's in Capitol Hill. And we were talking about...
I know those guys.
Yeah, you know those guys. Yeah, my son goes there. So it's career day. So I was talking about AI with the first graders. And of course, I'm like, who knows what AI is, because that's what I work on. And, of course, I get AI, artificial intelligence. My dad works with AI. And then one kid was like eager, jumping on a seat and going to the anxiety. It's the end of humanity. I'm like, I don't know about that. But I mean, the reality of it is, and this is what I told them, that the jobs that the majority of that class will have don't even exist today. And that is because of AI. And it's because that my job didn't exist 5 years ago, right? And so that skills gap because of AI and the skills involvement is really where we need to hone it.
Yeah,
so.
And I should note, this is the last year I'll be doing this. A robot's taking my place next year. So. Carl, you're nodding your head. I'm just curious if you have some input into this and whether, if someone is not accepted for, say, one job, maybe they can be sort of saved for another, or if there's something that might come down the line, how do you communicate that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is, like you mentioned about five years ago, there's so much effort in recruitment putting into identifying skills and actually what we want a person to do. And yet very rarely do our jobs involve what we were recruited to do. And prompt engineering is a great example. I don't think there were any job descriptions written 3 years ago that included that. It's just kind of an expected thing now. So we like to sort of say the most important skill is the skill to acquire skills. And so when you think of those candidates that are coming through, having that lens through them, because whether they fit right now or not is probably not very important. It's their capacities to adapt and to evolve and actually take on new challenges and learn from those new challenges is I would say it is the most important thing. What will characterize people in the job market in the next, I was going to say 10, 15 years, probably the next 2 or 3 years, is their ability to adapt. And a lot of the other conversation that we just had, I think, was fascinating because it was about removing a lot of the technical elements from recruitment. So a lot of the things that actually slow us down, which humans aren't that good at anyway. Like, it's not very satisfying on either end of the spectrum. Like, it's why we get held up, why we get ghosted, because they're essentially technical jobs that are very good for automation. As in, we can automate those really well. And what's left behind, and this is the hopefulness in me, is the stuff that's really human. The things that really engage us, that really bring about the best of us as people, as leaders, but just full stop. So those people that maybe aren't the right fit, maybe they are the right fit.
And Anthony, for such a huge company like Amazon that's growing it all the time, there may be jobs down the line, right? How do you use technology for that?
I was kind of just vibing with this right here a little bit, but
I felt the vibe.
I'm going to try to answer your question, but
Please.
I think so. I've been in recruiting a long time. I'll date myself. I used to have a phone on my desk and a fax machine, and you got to talk to a lot of people. There was like massive human interaction there. I think you actually had to walk resumes to businesses and hand them in at the time, but over time, like in the last probably 15 to 20 years, technology has actually made the recruiter's job a little more difficult in my mind. I think you layer in systems, tools, policy, compliance, and tools. They're all like feeding into this, and the recruiter has to get really good at tools mastery, system mastery, repetitive tasks. Like the recruiters that are the most successful can like manage high volumes of candidates through tools. And you kind of got away from the human interaction, part of what you were talking about as far as like, how do you manage large pools? I kind of feel like with AI now, recruiters, and I see it within my own space, is there's got to be a readiness and a willingness to learn, because I think a lot of recruiters have gotten very good at pattern matching and being really good at repetitive tasks and systems and tools to move things forward, they've got to get back to the muscle of actually talking to people, having conversations, understanding like what is the value proposition you bring to this candidate for this job that they're interested in. And I worry that we're going to have to go through this phase of transition where recruiters are going to have to relearn how to do the job in a more human kind of connected way. And they're going to have to do that by learning exactly how to get really good with leveraging AI technology. And so they've got to learn the technology. They also have to kind of learn how to get back in touch with like that human connection with candidates. And so,
Roz? Yeah, nothing quite like the
Can we
human
stay
experience.
here for a second?
Yeah.
You got me
Yeah,
now.
please.
I
There's
also
nothing
come,
quite like that human
I
experience.
also come from the white pages era of recruitment. Look, most of you don't know what that is. And it's funny because I remember the first quote I saw regarding AI and recruitment that really sums up what we're talking about here is AI will not replace recruiters. Recruiters who don't learn to use AI will be replaced. And the thing is that you described is, I don't know that I necessarily agree that technology made our jobs easier, but it's like the can you teach an old dog new tricks? There have been major evolutions in our industry over time. I mean, who remembers when LinkedIn came on the scene? Revolutionized how we did our jobs. And I remember I had this guy, Bob. Bob was an older gentleman. He hated LinkedIn, refused to learn how to use it. Bob maybe lasted 4.5 years after that, and then he retired and did something else. So I think, to your point, the beautiful thing about though where we are, which makes it a little bit easier for recruiters to adapt, is that the rest of the world that we use every day also evolved. Social media changed. How you book your flights have changed. How you find parking spots have now changed. The Internet of Things popped off. So there's a little bit more of your entire life changes, not just your work life. I think we try to separate these things sometimes, and the more that we can actually integrate them and see them holistically, the easier it becomes for us to embrace technology. I had a person on my team who was a little bit older, very much of the likeness of, I don't want anything to do with AI. Now, I'm a very busy person. I'm a mom, I'm an executive, and I happen to have kids at the opposite end of the spectrum. I have a 17-year-old going to college, 3 and a 1-year-old. Don't recommend that. Don't try. So when you're trying to do all these things, you need all the help you can get. And AI has been one of that. I have a 3-year-old who loves very long, very detailed bedtime stories. And the first time I said, let me see what ChatGPT can work out for us. And I asked Remington, I said, what do you want to hear about tonight, buddy? He goes, I want a story about an excavator. All right, what are we building? We're gonna build a new bridge. Great. Type it in ChatGPT, and I also added, keep it under a minute. Saved me time, made my kid happy. But when I share those types of stories with my team, even though it's not their job, they're like, okay, let me see how this can probably help me in my job.
That's beautiful.
So I think it's to your point, it's still, we have to evolve. But the beautiful thing about it is the rest of the world is evolving along with us. The candidates are evolving. The Gen Zers are now applying for jobs more. They're used to technology. They're used to engaging with AI. Their best friends are AI. So it's going to be very different than I think what we've seen historically.
And I love this topic. I wonder if any else of you can sort of pitch in on this topic about the sort of buy-in, right? Getting people to buy into this idea, showing that it's not so difficult, that it actually is easier than you'd think. It's accessible. You have to tell your candidates that, Erin?
Yeah, I mean, we do have to get buy-in. I mean, even internally and externally with AI. And I think, once we have a really good build up and in culture, and so we have at every layer when we're bringing in a new technology, whether it's AI or just a regular tech stack addition. I mean, we are having local SMEs that are really the champions of that. And I think when they start to see results, I mean, we're a very celebrate the wins culture and how this is impacting and saving time. And so, I mean, we do that, on every media channel that you can think of, from Teams to, our Unily sites to, anything. I mean, we even send an email every once in a while, but not very often anymore. So, but if we can't have that upskilling ability and thinking about it in a very fresh way, I mean, to your point, they're not going to be a recruiter much longer. And, I was reading again, an article that said last week, the average recruiter is spending 17 hours a week just looking at resumes. That is insanity. That's 17 hours that they're not talking to candidates or to hiring managers. And if you're a recruiter, the only thing that you really want to do in your job is to make the match and extend the offer. That's why you're in it. You're the matchmaker. You're not an admin looking through resumes. And so, if we can give them the skills to use AI to take that 17 hours and find something else to do and build human connection, because that's what you want to do. You want to pick up the phone, you want to talk to people, right? And so, that's where the skills involvement has to come. Like, they don't have to spend 17 hours on resumes.
In our short time together, too, I also wanted to touch on this. In a time of economic uncertainty and disruption, companies have to conduct a lot of layoffs these days across the board. How can AI and tools help HR departments help find placement for other workers in a time of displacement? When someone is laid off, they need help right now. I'm wondering if any of you want to lay on that. Jack?
I mean, some of what we've been talking about, right? Like, how do you get candidates? We talked about ghosting a little bit, right? Sometimes it's the companies ghosting the candidates, but sometimes the candidates just are really bad at applying to jobs, right? Like, I see candidates every week, and I'm like, what made you think that you would be good at this job and be a fit, right? Because they just are not. So how can you use AI internally, right, to help with that matching, right? To do the pre-work before you have to make a reorganization.
What does that look like for you?
We do it ahead of time, right? So like when we have to we don't do many layoffs, but we do restructure and reorganize our teams internally. And when we do that, there's a lot of work that goes up front, usually with like a small number of people because you can't tell a lot of folks. That's like a lot of work for a small group. AI helps, right? Because then you can take these large groups of employees and look at their skill sets. Internal candidates are great because you know a ton about them. Like, you know their performance reviews, you know what they've worked on, you know what teams they've been on. And you can do that work up front to find placement for folks internally, sometimes just giving them another job right out of the gate and say, we're going to move you over here because this is what's happening internally. Or you can push them in that direction and help them on their journey to find something else inside.
We have just a few minutes left, and I want to do sort of a speed round here as we wrap up with everyone today. Could each of you leave our audience with an idea of why the job candidate experience is important for employers to care about, and one thing that our audience can keep in mind to sort of make this better? We talked about how so much is changing. Next year, this panel could look a whole lot different in terms of the texture of what we're talking about. Carl, start us off. Just what can folks take away?
So why it's so important, we like to say better humans make better leaders, and better leaders make better humans. So the way that the people that you get in your organisation, the way they act, is just fundamental, not just to your organisation, but to our societies as a broadly. And the takeaway point, I haven't really talked much about it, but is there's a great quote, and it's like, seeing is not believing. We see the world as we are, not as it is. And so our own mindsets and biases that we bring to the world, which is often invisible to us, but not too hard to find, colours what we see. And often I think we talk about candidates and what they are. I think the first thing we should stop before we even go into any process to get new employees is to look at ourselves and understand where we're coming from and what our mindsets are and what those biases might be. And then we can do a lot better job for everyone.
Aaron, what's the takeaway you think today?
I mean, candidate experience is really, it's your reputational advantage, not only from a recruiting perspective, but also your place in the market. And, we're not Uber, but we have, every one of our candidates is going to be a hiring manager at some point, right? And that's the idea, is that they're going to be a future client. And we've invested in the candidate experience more in the last few years than we ever have before. We have teams dedicated to that candidate experience, just thinking about it every step of the way in those moments of truth. And I really think that, if we're the candidate experience, I mean, again, like, there's more avenues for them, and the competition for us is a lot bigger than it ever was before. And so if we have to set ourselves apart, and how to do that is definitely by providing that experience that they're really looking for. So.
And do you feel like AI is being more embraced by people just in generally?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, even myself, like, if I have to talk to a human for some of the simple things, like, I get really annoyed. Like, I don't want to call, right? I want to do it online or something. But so I think there's a place for it, right? Like, that's again the moment of truth. People want AI when they want something quick that doesn't require a lot of like human interaction and a lot of thoughtfulness and consultation. But they do want the human interaction when it is getting advice interview preparation, talking about opportunities and weighing pros and cons, right? And so again, that consultative approach is where the human connection really needs to come in, but not when it comes to resolving a time card or a paycheck issue. So,
Anthony, what do you think about all this?
So at Amazon, we have 16 leadership principles. And one of them is
Just
customer
16?
obsession. Yeah, just 16. I know. Last time I checked. But one of them has been around for a long time, and that's customer obsession. And I think whenever we're trying to figure out a problem, we always say, are we working back from the customer? And I think candidates are the customer for us in multiple ways. I think that holds true for many on this stage. I think for us with AI, it's how do we be more thoughtful in how we apply those interventions throughout the experience to enrich it for the candidate and get to the right outcome faster. By no means are we anywhere near perfecting that, but I think for this group, one thing I would just say, and it kind of echoes what Roz mentioned, is really don't be afraid of the technology. Use it as much as you can and learn as much as you can. I think sometimes you'll be super surprised at how much easier your life can be if you can figure out how to use it in the right way. And it's going to be different. You know, like we all know the learning curve. It takes a while, but like use it. I think that's the one takeaway I would say.
That's great, Anthony. Roz.
Look, as my 17-year-old says, the world sucks and life is hard. And as we heard, it takes you 6 months to find a job. So the candidate experience really matters, and you could be changing someone's life. AI is here to help you with that. Everything from on the sourcing side or even the internal applicant side, how do I find the best profile quickly to give that great experience? When you're in the screening stage, how do I assess this talent? AI can help you there. When you're interviewing, interview effectiveness. You want to know, we've done all this work to get you to the interview process. How are my interviewers actually showing up? How are they assessing talent? Are they giving the candidate the opportunity to demonstrate the right skills? AI can actually help you assess that and create better interview processes. And then offer. Use it in the offer process. Are we making fair and equitable offers? AI can assist with that. Use AI, don't be afraid of it. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to walk you through the specific tools that I'm using at each of those stages. But that's how you really want to enable yourself and your teams to leverage the technology to help make someone's day brighter and maybe make the world suck a little bit less.
Yeah, and training, as you mentioned, I'm glad you mentioned, the DEI aspect of this, training the right models, training it in the right way for the future.
Yes.
Yeah, so critical. And Jack, from an Uber perspective, from your perspective, some great takeaways today.
Yeah, I mean, don't be afraid, right? Like, you're going to mess it up. We're all going to mess it up and do the wrong thing. Do it fast and then pivot if you need to. In talent acquisition, we're at an advantage right now because we have our pick of the candidates, right? It swings. Sometimes it's not the case and you're fighting, your competitors for that one hire and the candidate has the choice, right? But that's not the case today. That allows us to make more mistakes and kind of hone in how we do things. So when that flips again, you'll have the advantage, right, in the marketplace. Like, if a candidate has an Amazon offer, an Uber offer, and a Google offer, which one do they take, right? Probably the one where they've had a better experience, right? All else equal, so.
It could be Zillow.
Or Zillow. Because of the experience, right? Because of the focus on the candidates.
I think we need to have Roz's 17-year-old child here on next year. But guys, thank you so much. And let's give our panel a round of applause here. I cannot wait to see what we do next year.